welcome back to Julie's Orchids. Today I'm going to do a repotting. As you can see, we are at the prepping area in my kitchen, so that means repot today. This repotting is in response to a comment from a viewer, Karl, from my first episode. Karl mentioned that he had a big white orchid that died and he was upset about it. Well, Karl, that is upsetting, and that happened to me quite frequently. So I'm going to make some assumptions. I assume that you've probably mentioned big white orchid, so I'm assuming it's a Phalaenopsis type, of which you can see two right here. I received this one as a gift from a friend, and I went down to the corner deli and bought this lovely one right here. So first of all, we're going to compare the difference between buying plants from a nice garden center or nursery, which would be represented by this one, and buying one from your local big box store, IKEA, or corner deli, which would be represented by this one. So we'll first have a look at how they're presented. The one from the corner deli comes in a very nice little pot with all sorts of sphagnum moss fluffing about over the top of the pot. We'll move this one to the side and discuss this one. Now this one we can see is potted in a different medium. I'll try to zoom in on that. You can see that it's got some big rocks, some grow stones. There is also coconut husk. And one thing nice about this is we can see nice clear plastic pot, beautiful growing roots. There's some sphagnum in it, so I'm assuming it's grow stone, coconut husk, coconut coir, and sphagnum moss. This one is not going to be repotted. The roots look healthy. I'm going to let the flower spike stay on until it naturally dries on its own, and then I will repot that one. As a matter of comparison, I'll move this one out of the way. The corner deli. They have beautiful no-name phals. As I've mentioned earlier, I get a lot of my phals from the corner deli because they're fairly cheap. I go there frequently and I see when they come in. You can see this one's really pretty. It's got nice purple lip, white flowers with a pinky stripe. I thought it was quite pretty, so I thought, I'll buy it. This one has been in their shop for a couple, 2 or 3 weeks now, so he gave it to me at a discount. Otherwise, I would not have purchased it. When I got it, I had to pour about 1/4 cup of water out of the pot because the thing was literally swimming in water. Now, one thing that these kind of orchids do is they come in a decorative container. So we're going to pull it out of its decorative container and see that it is just dripping wet, and there is all that water in the pot. That's far too much water. Another thing you notice is that I've mentioned in earlier episodes, Phalaenopsis don't like to get their crown rot. They're very susceptible to crown rot. So all of this spag should be removed off of here. And upon initial first glances of this thing, looks like we have fairly healthy green roots. Fairly healthy green roots. But you can tell the difference between this plant and this plant. This one is not light and airy. Phalaenopsis are epiphytes, which means they grow attached to other plants. You will find these stuck on the sides of trees, growing up them, their roots sinking into the bark and anchoring them down. They don't have any soil, so to speak, around them. They might have some leaf litter and things that falls from upper branches in the trees, but for the most part, you couldn't take a breath and these roots are going to rot. There's no air holes, there's nothing. So what we're going to do is try to get it out of this pot. So you kind of try to grab down low and just give it a good squeeze. And here we go. Now, oh, this is quite packed in here. And sphagnum moss is kind of sometimes easy to get out and sometimes not, but you can see this is creating algae, and that can kill roots. So we're just going to pick this hard sphagnum moss. Now, you can see how little room for air there is in this medium, which will eventually cause, with as wet as it is and as good maintaining of wetness that sphagnum moss has, it will kill these roots shortly. And I'm expecting to find some dead ones deep inside all of this. Now this is going to be, look at that, time consuming. So what I might do, oh no, there's starting to come a good chunk right here. And every time I film, the dog feels the need to eat. So that's what you hear crunching in the background. Happy as eating. Well, that's a dead root right in the middle of the plant, which is pretty well what you expect to find with these kinds of setups when you buy phals in this way. So irregardless of flower spike or not, bugs or not, when I see Phalaenopsis orchids planted in nothing but sphagnum moss in these little plastic containers, when I buy them, I bring them home and immediately repot them. Now, quite likely, because these are used to sphagnum moss, and they've been in here a while, still possibly going to lose the majority of these roots, but, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And it is a pretty little plant with nice flowers, so we'll give it a go. Now you'll notice now that we're getting into this root, that this root, now that it's exposed and we can see it, is not green like the other ones. Well, Phalaenopsis do chlorophyll through their roots, and these ones were just packed inside the sphagnum moss, so had no access to the sun, so could not produce the green pigment that we associate with their roots. Now I'm going to at this time go ahead and just pull this flower spike support off. That's starting to get in my way. Now I've been having recently pretty good run of luck with doing these and not losing the roots and not losing the flower spikes, and then having them come along quite well. However, as I showed in that first episode, the first few orchids I got didn't fare so well and are very set back, but are growing new roots and new leaves and seem to be coming along okay, but I imagine it's going to be a while before I actually trigger their blooming cycle, because I'd like them to get a bit more vegetative growth on them. And I do try to get right on up in there and get that right out of there, because it does hold on to quite a bit of moisture up in that rootstock, and then you can get stem rot. And since these are monopody orchids, which means they just grow from a stem straight up, if you get stem rot, well, that's it. They're dead. Okay, so we've got quite a bit of that media off pretty good. And what I'm now going to do is go over to the sink and give this a rinse off. And I might try to wash some of this very oily leaf shine that they have a tendency to put on there. This feels like it's coated in olive oil. Leaf shine should not be this heavy coating because they do breathe through their leaves, but it does seem like that they did not, with this batch, spray the underneath sides, because this is where the breathing apparatuses are with these plants, is on the underneath sides of the leaves. Get some of this dirt off here from the repot. So we'll go on pause and come back to you. Alrighty, now we're back from the sink and we've gotten a lot of that media washed off. The roots aren't looking too bad. There's a few dead ones up into here, but for the most part, this one's lost its velamin and this one's dead. So what we're going to do now is, as always, anytime I repot, give the roots a good spray down with hydrogen peroxide, 3%. And now we're going to take another little break and let that fizzle away in there. Alrighty, so the hydrogen peroxide has fizzled away and done its thing, and now we're going to find all these dead roots and we're going to snip them. So this one here, as you can see, I'll hold this up for you, has a good section, and then the string, this is the actual root, and then the velamin's good again, and then it becomes mush. So this one's dead. I'm going to go ahead and cut that one off. It's that one right there in the middle. And you can see another little bit of deads coming out of it, so being careful not to trim the others around it. Give it a snip. Now that's a nice green growing root tip. And to be honest with you, I am quite surprised at how healthy these roots are. This one here again, you can see the tip of it has died. Has gone from green to this brown, sort of mushy, and then there's that string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that bit there off. We'll cut that right a bit there. And this one again is mushy. I'm going to cut this one right here. We can see that that's died there, and it's just going mushy and soft all the way to the top. So we're going to give this one a nice trim there. And then I'd say for the most part this is looking pretty good. That little bit's dead right here. Cut that off. Green growing root tip. That's a dead root tip. It's still firm, so I'm leaving it. So that's that. Now these are the items that we're going to use for today's repot. We have just a few beads of slow release fertilizer. I'll probably only put maybe 3 in the pot. We have very light and fluffy sphagnum moss, again coarse grade perlite vermiculite, and I'm going to go ahead and use small orchiata bark. And I have a pot that I have pre-drilled the holes in. And I want to try to put the orchid in to the pot something like this, keeping in mind that this was an aerial root, as was the other aerial root, and we don't want those in the pot. That will kill them surely. I'm going to have the plant sitting in the pot about yay, because as I mentioned earlier, Phalaenopsis do not like to have their roots buried, like they had them buried from the corner deli. So we're going to keep this light, airy, and fluffy. And let's just move a few things out of the way. Again, so we're going to start off with a nice fluffy layer of sphagnum moss at the bottom of the pot. I just kind of let it fall into place. I don't really squish it down that much. We'll go with a sprinkling of orchiata bark and a couple grains of this. Now I'll put in 1 little grain, and we'll give this a small mixing around. We want the orchiata bark kind of mixed in there a bit, not completely at the bottom. And there we go. So something along the lines of that, where we still have it, sphagnum moss reaching the bottom of the pot. Now because of the size of this one, this is all the more bottom dressing I'm going to put in, if you will call it that, and we'll have a look at this and this were the aerial roots. So we'll try to very carefully sort of stick these roots right on down inside. And now what can you do to make them fit a bit better? Well, you'll find there's a natural way that these roots will tend to rotate and sink down into the pot just a wee bit better. And there we have that right there. And now I've got a nice big hole with which I can poke some of this growing medium down into the center bottom of the pot. And the idea is here that we're going to layer the spag moss to where there's little bits of spag moss still touching each layer from the bottom layer, so it can have that wicking sort of properties. And again, we want to keep it nice and light and airy. Give it a little push down in there. And we'll just push some right down between those. And now we'll do a layer of coarse grained orchiata bark. And if you do this when the plant's roots are nice and green, if they're dry, go ahead and give it a good water first, and that'll make the roots quite a bit more pliable and less likely for you to break them. And they'll poke down right in there. So now we've got a little bit of sphagnum moss still poking through from the bottom layer, so we'll find some nice light and fluffy sphagnum moss and we'll poke. And this is going to be my final layer, and this is just going to be a nice top dressing of bark. And this is again mostly to keep the fungus gnats at bay. Now they do seem to be quite a problem here in Perth. I'm not sure why. And again, you can give it a tap, give it a poke. So I am not going to reuse the skewer that they had. I am going to trim this old flower spike down here a little bit closer. That'll make it easier to get in there. So as you can see, this is quite oily. Not sure what to do about that. I'll just wipe some of that oil off these leaves. Well, that feels remarkably less oily. I do not believe I'm going to stake that spike. I do like the way it is just lying right over there. So here we have repotted Phalaenopsis. So Karl, I hope that gives you some ideas on what to do when you get one of these. I like these clear plastic pots because it allows you to see the wetness or dryness of the medium, as well as it allows you to see the greenness of the roots. So with these, you rewater them when the roots are no longer green. If you water them while they're still green, you could overwater them and cause root rot. Very simple. Get clear plastic pots, poke some holes in them, and rewater when the roots are no longer green. When they are white. This one's a bit green, but you can see there's some white velamen on it. So when it's more white, all white, silvery white, give them a water. Other than that, let them be. So that is a repot of that beauty. Well, thank you again for watching. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe would be nice. We'll follow up on this plant in the future to see how it responded to the repotting. And I thank you again. You guys have a happy, healthy, and safe day. Bye.